Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to me to introduce the last speaker of our this year's conference. He's a famous psychologist, mathematician, and the author of the socio-mapping method, a great coach and my perfect teacher. Coaching involves a lot of questions, so my question is, who is coming to the stage?
Standing ovation pro Radvana Bahbouha.
The standing ovation goes to Radvan Bahbouh.
Tak, slyšíte mě dobře?
Can you hear me?
Že ano.
Perfect.
Já jsem dostal za úkol, že mám stát tady, bude to trošku výzva.
I'm supposed to stand here because I'm used to moving, so it'll be very hard for me to stand here. I wanted to share with you this title. And there is a part of the sentence which way and how, which is quite important, but I'll start on a personal note. People who are excited with their work are deformed in a way, let's say. My professional deformation is that I don't trust people and I doubt a lot. I doubt really a lot compared to other people. It wouldn't matter if I was a detective or a philosopher, but I'm a psychologist, and this does not really fit a profile of a psychologist. I don't doubt what people tell me when they speak about their experience or stories. This is what I believe. And when it comes to their dreams and hopes, I definitely trust them, and I have more trust in them than they have themselves. But I start doubting when people tell me some general truths. When some people start advising others, then I start doubting it very much. So when someone comes to the stage and says people who are excited with their work say that they are professionally deformed, now I start thinking whether this is true or whether this is an opinion or whether there is some research behind it, and where is the evidence for that research. This professional deformation of mine is related to my experience. 25 years ago, I was teaching methodology of psychology. And methodology of psychology deals with finding an efficient way from one point to another point. We need to rely on good information to be able to stick to that journey. So it's not just which way to take, but how to assess the things that we use. Is it a personal opinion? There is nothing wrong with personal opinions, but of course there is some bias to opinions. Or is there some evidence behind it? And what is used in a methodology of psychology a lot is this diagram showing that there is some classification of evidence as well. The lowest, at the bottom part, is some expert opinion. I have been a coach for 30 years, so this is quite some experience, but again, just like any person, I'm not immune to some cognitive biases, to some things that we don't want to see. So this is really the bottom part. Then there are some well-documented case studies or a series of case studies. This is good, but it's even better to have correlation studies showing the relationships between different variables and providing some numbers. However, these numbers can be due to some background aspects, so it's better to be able to follow some groups of people who exercise, for instance, and we can monitor whether this improves their fitness level. Or there are some people who collect some health or some symbols of happiness, and we can we can see whether they are happier again. And then we have pseudo-experiments, randomized experiments, and systemic overviews. And on the top there are meta-analyses. These are quite unique. And this is really the very top of the pyramid. And it always is based on the lower levels. It's maybe once in a decade when somebody makes a meta-analysis on all the evidence that we already know. And this is really the best evidence that we have. It's not very often that a meta-analysis is published. And this is, again, based on a lot of research. And it's a summary of all the research that has been performed. That's why I'm saying this because of using the term meta-analysis on the next slides. But I would like to mention happiness pie as well. When you hear happiness pie, it might be the fortune cookie, maybe, or maybe some Vatican bread. So this is again a recommendation from AI. This is what people might imagine happiness pie. But a happiness pie is something that Lyubomirsky came up with, who was trying to calculate how much of our happiness we can influence. 50% of our happiness is due to our genes. This can be compared in twins. It might look like a great number, but for instance, 80% of our intelligence is based on our genes, but we still practice and we still go to school. So 50% is quite a lot of space for us. 40% it's our acts and thoughts. So this is our decisions. It's how we select our work, and 10% is outer circumstances, external circumstances. You might be surprised that it is not a lot, because the external world is not something we have under control, and it can be a source of anxieties. There are very often some methodological comments on this happiness pie, but I think that this assessment is quite right. This is a very good piece of news. What does it say to us? This is a meta-analysis published in 2015 dealing with the relationship between subjective well-being, which is related to happiness, because in the end, this always ends with happiness, and the relationship with our objectives and our monitoring the progress towards these objectives. And this meta-analysis showed that there is a strong relationship between us having a very good objective and striving towards that objective and our happiness. The number here is 0.43. It's quite a lot. So 0.43 times 0 to 43 shows us how great the correlation is between happiness and setting objectives.
18.5% of our happiness is influenced by the fact whether we as adults set some development goals or learning goals and are attaining those goals. That's fantastic. 18.5% is a great number. The other things I mentioned, your job, your partner, and the selection of those are very hard to learn. You learn the hard way, but this is very simple in principle. It's simple, but there are many theories around it, because there are different types of goals. What if my goal was to win the lottery or winning a court case? In both cases, in one case you cannot influence it at all, in the other one you cannot really follow any progress towards the goal, so those goals are not very well formulated. So this goal-setting theory actually focuses on how we should set our goals and what type of goals are the most valuable. I suppose you know the outcomes of these studies. Sometimes they are summarized in the SMART goals: specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, etc. There has to be a certain term by a date by which you want to finish it. There might be other interpretations to this acronym. Anyway, this is a bit misleading because when you say measurable, many people think it has to be quantitative. But there's a difference. If I say I'll go jogging 3 times a week and in the meantime I run a marathon, there's a difference, even though it's quantitative. Or if I say I'm going to go take pictures and I make 100 of them, and then I want to have an exhibition of those pictures. So there are 2 different types of goals, and some of them, as long as you reach them, that's it, you've reached them. But when you say I go jogging 3 times this week, nice, you have a number, but if you do not go jogging the week after, you not attained your goal of actually being able to jog. So basically a good goal is a moment when you know that you have learned something. Coaching or the psychology and coaching use term the miraculous question. It is a tool that helps us to formulate a person's goal. So we ask them, if you get better in this, in leadership or in parenthood, we will celebrate it together and you'll go home feeling happy. What will actually make you realize that you have mastered or that you have attained the goal? There are many books about this miraculous questions and modifications to it. The thing is, a qualitative goal that you can visualize is an event that you see, that you suddenly have. You have a flower, for example, that you haven't had before. But there are other types of goals which are performance goals. So by sowing more flowers, it's not something that actually develops you. It's a matter of sustainability. Are you on a good path? And the study that I mentioned says that it's not even about attaining the goal, it's about you seeing the progress, you seeing yourself approaching the goal. So it's development or growth goals that help us achieve happiness. And this can apply to various areas of our lives. When we talk about learning, we usually mean skills, learning new words, for example, vocabulary, but it can be handstand, it can be competencies, using a foreign language or using our own language, public speaking, for example. It can apply to some characteristics. You want to be more patient, you want to work on that. Motivations, you want to be happy at work again or enjoy your work again. Attitudes, you do not want to be that much affected by things. Relationships, you can be working on a relationship with your child or your partner. And experience, you want to experience more happy moments. Another evidence that supports the fact that this is the right path to enrich our lives and to be happy is the coaching way. You may know that coaching, actually etymologically speaking, the word comes from the town of Coach, in which coaches, vehicles were manufactured, and that was applied to actually coaching, meaning getting people somewhere. So that was a bit of etymology, but now I would like you to focus on 2 important meta-analyses published in this decade. They prove that coaching significantly increases the probability of you attaining some kind of development or growth goals. The meta-analyses focused on whether something else was affected as well, a part of the goal. And both of these analyses came to the conclusion that there is an effect in terms of well-being. So if you get a client who wants to learn public speaking, for example, one of the side effects, so to speak, is that they gain more self-esteem and that they're more effective, meaning that they feel better. This was not a correlation, there is a causality. So if somebody is sitting here right now and they have no goal, but they do set a goal, a development goal for them, and they set one every 3 months, for example, they will enter an elite club of people who are happier. And they're also healthier. That's something that we know today. Their brain actually repairs. There's this neuroscaffolding theory that says that if you learn something new, then your brain is being repaired also in other areas than the one that you need for learning what you are learning. So you might say, okay, it's easy to grow when you're working on your hobbies, but at work, is there really space to learn something new? Well, let's have a look at another meta-analysis. This meta-analysis focuses on something that we want to work on often at work, in particular engagement. This meta-analysis proved on a big sample of people that people stay at work and perform better when they're engaged, and that's why we want to work on engagement and enhance engagement of their employees. And there are ways to actually influence engagement. How do we do that? We know that when we look at the Q12 questionnaire. This questionnaire, if you look at it, has 4 items. 4 items out of 12 are dedicated to development. Have you learned something new in the past 6 months? And have you an opportunity to actually grow and learn at work? And what also applies to work is whether somebody else at work encourages you to grow, and also superiors actually, or someone else, show interest in how you're growing. So there are 4 items of all these 12 that are immediately learned to grow, linked to growing and development. So if you want people to be happy, it's good to focus on development goals. Easy, isn't it? As Sherlock Holmes would say. Can you estimate how many people try to grow systematically? Of course, children have to do it because they go to school, they have goals such as graduation, exams, etc. But if I should summarize how many people, then it would be 10%. Where do these 10% come from? We have no meta-analysis for that. We have to use several resources. But there are estimates that we can use. We can estimate, for example, how many people in areas where people set goals, how many of these people actually want to make a change. Usually people do this in September or January, back to school, New Year, and we know that only about 50% actually set a goal to change something. Usually it's like 1/3, 1/2 of people. But how many actually stick to it? 10%. If you look at research from various countries, it's always similar all over the world. I have a resource here which says 8%. Then there's a great book by Richard Weissman who had a different method. He said, let people formulate their goal and just do not ask them anything and come back to them 1 year later and ask them if they have achieved this this development goal. How many people will have achieved it within 1 year? 10%. And next, the last book that I've mentioned even gives a stricter estimate, 1%, but that applied to people who actually regularly evaluate whether they are approaching the goal or not.
So it's just a small part of the population, but do you want to be in that group? Yes, you do. It's not expensive. It's just about you regularly formulating what you are working on, what you want to improve. And it doesn't have to mean that you are doing this for the first time of your life. It can be a challenge that you can repeat regularly, but you want to do things differently once. Why don't people do this? It's very easy. Very often we do many things in our lives, but you can see that this iceberg is a metaphor for those 10%. This is one of the reasons why people don't do it. People are just lazy. People complete their university or education and they are happy with their fixed mindsets. They don't want to do anything anymore. People are not trying to improve themselves. Unfortunately, it's most of the population like that. But my clients are not like that. My clients are very motivated and very intelligent, but still what I encounter there is that they have periods in life where they don't systematically work on their development. This is related to a problem resolved 150 years ago by Mr. Plimsoll. He was asking himself why ships were sinking, and he found out that it was because they were full to the brim. So he started promoting the idea for ships to have some line, and until or up to that line you can add some load, but when this line is in line with the water level, you should stop adding load to that ship. It was very hard to promote this idea, but finally he managed, and this is what we can see today. You can see that people don't have capacity for our development. We don't have any space for maneuvering in unexpected situations. We don't have the freedom and the space for that. So one of the things that blocking us from developing ourselves is not getting rid of things. So before we go into development, if we want to start learning how to play a piano, you need to free that space. So you need to free some volume in your diaries. So you need to define what you don't want to do anymore, and when you free up your loading space, you can develop. This is the last but one slide. Why is it working like that? I have just explained why most people don't have development targets. Why our development targets can enrich our lives a lot and lead us to happiness. It's because it's a objective or target that gets us to the right journey. But the journey in the end is more important than the target itself. It's a target that got us to the journey, but it's about enjoying that journey. And this is the paradox of development. It doesn't really matter whether it's learning a language or learning how to play a piano. It's important that you are doing something. It's important that we are progressing somewhere. And by doing something and learning something, we increase our mindfulness, and we are mindful about things that we did not realize before. So it's not about the start and end of the journey, it's about slowing down and looking around us. And by that we find out that we can discover things that we did not expect to find. This is called serendipity. This is the readiness for unplanned, fortunate discoveries. So we are looking around on that journey. This is a journey that is here because of our development targets, and by looking around we can take also what we find on that way, which is also good luck, because we need time and space to notice these lucky moments and lucky things on that journey. So I hope that when I finish now, you will start looking around and you can start thinking whether you set some development targets, growth targets, whether you focus on things that you want to progress, but hand in hand with freeing space to be able to do that. Thank you very much.
Už tady lovím tu plastovou placičku z kapsy.
So, I'm looking at the questions that started popping here already. So the first question, there's a good start to start with the first question. How would you work with a person who is not engaging, who doesn't have any objectives and targets at work? Well, I would make this person engaged. But this is something that cannot be done externally. This must be the person's internal motivation. The manager is not responsible for that. The managers are responsible for decreasing the demotivation of people, but it's not about engagement. The person must be engaged. So I have to tell the person that engagement is something that is expected. I can help him find the way. But if the person does not want to do it by himself or herself, well, I think that it's better to say goodbye to that person. The second question, what are your objectives and targets currently? Well, they're quite special. In summer, I wanted to learn hiragana and katakana. So these are the scripts that I wanted to learn in summer. But now I want to tidy up my place. Well, you might think this is a strange target, a strange objective, but 23 years I moved to a new apartment and I have collected so many layers of things in my study. So it's like some archaeological examination. So I'm looking forward to all those discoveries that I will make in my study. So this is a fundamental cleaning. I don't have a picture with me here, but my study really looks like a place that is worth a development target. Constant objective setting creates a pressure on a person. You might feel that something is expected from you all the time. I had a client who had a target of not setting any targets. So it's important not to have your growth as one of the items on your to-do list. It's your wish list and not a to-do list. So development is like an opportunity to get to know something, because there are not many things in your lives that you want to be good at, but there are many things that you can just try to be able to understand all those people who devote their lives to that specific activity. It's nice to have little trips to different areas like that, because then it's full of new information and knowledge. How to get rid of frustration when you cannot reach your target. William James once said that even our self-confidence is given by the proportion between our expectations and achievements. One of the things is that sometimes we have too high expectations. And also the evaluation and assessment concept. Little kids develop perfectly. This is a role model for development, because little children don't really care whether the dancing steps are proper or whether they're painted properly. This is what school does to us. We should be like children. We should be just enjoying ourselves without judging. There are many questions, but they'll be leave up for the later discussion. I'm not setting any growth targets, and I still consider myself a successful person. Am I broken? No, not at all. It's just that a person setting growth objectives increases their chance to be happy. But if you are happy without those targets, it's fine. At some points of life, we are happy about not having to do anything. But when we don't feel well, this is the room for becoming happier. The last question, is the leader a coach? Well, the leader coaches in a way. He or she should be coaching people, but we should not call him or her a coach, because the agenda of a leader and a coach gets mixed up here. The leader wants a person to perform and to do some things, and the coach wants to support person achieving their targets. So it's nice when a leader tries to use coaching strategies and supports his or her employees, but it's not the same as being a coach. Thank you, Radvan Bahbouh. Enjoy the rest of the conference.